Good afternoon. It sounds like this microphone is working, more or less. Can people hear me? Raise your hand if you can hear me. All right, people in the back are raising their hands, that's good. Welcome everybody, we've got a quorum and we want to be respectful of your time. My watch says it's already 4:07, so I apologize for starting late. Welcome to all of you, we appreciate your being here. We are the Anti-Displacement Task Force. We are not city employees. We are all members of the community who are volunteering our time to be here, and we really appreciate your volunteering your time to be here to help make sure that we come up with a good set of recommendations to the City Council about the risks of displacement and how to avoid displacement in the south part of the city. We had requested that Councilman Arias be here, and in a few minutes I'm going to ask him to say some words about the process, about how what we're doing relates to the TCC Transform Fresno process, which is related but not the same. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We've got a quorum. And we've got a few people. Ms. Darden did contact us and let us know that she wasn't going to be able to be with us today. She has some competing obligations. So that she's the only person I've heard from. So we're going to go ahead and go. So thanks for being here. So Grecia, if we could start with you and you could introduce yourself and tell us about your organization and two sentences.
Great. Hi, good evening, everyone. Grecia Lenes with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. We're a local nonprofit here in Fresno, working across the Central Valley and the Eastern Coachella Valley with low-income communities of color. I'm here because this is also my home. I was born and raised in Fresno, Southeast Fresno specifically, so very excited to be here. I do want to excuse myself in advance. I have to leave a little bit early for a meeting that we're hosting over at the West Fresno Library in case anyone's interested. It's related to the TCC program where we've invited the Executive Director of the Strategic Growth Council to come in and hear from you all and speak a little bit on the work that, the role that they're playing right now. So that will be at the West Fresno Library at 5:30, so I will be heading out about 15-20 minutes early. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robert Fuentes. I am a civil rights and labor attorney with the law firm of Sid and Macedo.
Hi, my name is Catherine Forbes. I'm a professor at Fresno State. I'm a cultural anthropologist, and part of my area is around city planning and zoning and around the ways in which local governments interpret law.
Eric Payne, trustee with State Center Community College District, representing Area 2, executive director of the Central Valley Urban Institute, and born and raised in this community. This is actually my voting precinct. I grew up on Annandale, which is right around the corner, and I'm your co-chair.
The vice chair, actually, but who's counting? My name is Patience Milrod. I'm a lawyer. I'm not born and raised in Fresno, but I've been here since 1980, so I claim Fresno. I'm the executive director of Central California Legal Services, which is legal aid for the 6 counties in Fresno County and the 5 surrounding counties. So, and I'm your chair.
Artie Padilla, director of Every Neighborhood Partnership, a local organization that works with youth development, community development, and a resident of Southwest Fresno.
Preston Prince, CEO of the Fresno Housing Authority. Really excited about Chinatown Live tomorrow, 5 p.m. Be there.
I'm Morgan Doizaki. I'm with Central Fish Company. It's my family business. And I'm also board chair of the Chinatown Fresno Foundation.
Thank you. So all of you should have an agenda, and I'm asking the committee to take a look at it and see if y'all agree that we should, that this is our map for our evening today. I would like to propose, I would love it, because some of city staff, and I know Grecia, and probably some people in the audience would like to go to the SGC public meeting, and so if we can get our work done by 5:30, that would be pretty exciting. So let's try to do that if we possibly can, rather than going until 6. And I would like to recommend that we move the Transform Fresno Displacement Avoidance Plan Workshop input section 5, that we move that up under and to come after operating rules, if that's acceptable to the committee, to the task force.
Yes.
Is that any objection to that? Okay, that looks like consensus. So, and that way city staff and interested folks can participate on both those issues. Okay, so we have a meeting summary, thank you city staff, from our last meeting. These are not minutes. I would like to therefore just consider them city staff's record of what we did without necessarily giving it our imprimatur as the official record, but it's helpful. And I appreciate it, and if it's all right with everybody, we can just accept them. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Rob looks like, are you sure, Rob? You good? Okay. All right. Let's move to operating rules. We had a very lively and I thought helpful and emotionally powerful meeting last time, and we did not get through our agenda. So thinking about it, we as a task force need to hear from the public in order to come up with recommendations to the city council, and we also need to get our work done. So given the tension between those two things, I mean, we have to get our work done, but our work has to be informed by what the public has to say about the issues. So given those two things, we need some set of operating rules that everybody understands ahead of time and that will govern how we conduct these proceedings. So I welcome input from the committee, from the task force about that. Rob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before proposing a few operating rules, and definitely would want to hear from the rest of the task force on those proposed rules, I just want to step back and provide some context. Just elaborating on what you were just saying, Madam Chair, we as a task force have one overarching goal, and that's to develop meaningful, concrete policy recommendations in order to prevent displacement. And in order to accomplish that goal, we have a secondary goal of listening to as broad a segment of the community as possible. And I know a number of the members of this task force, and I know we're all committed to accomplishing those goals, and as was stated multiple times at the last meeting, we don't want this to be a checking the box exercise. However, in order to accomplish those dual goals of developing meaningful recommendations and of listening to as many people from the community as possible, we would be unable to do that if, one, our meetings are unstructured, if two, we're unable to get through an agenda, and three, if our public comment sessions are dominated by just a couple folks. And so, as we just said, we're not the city council. We're not an elected body like the city council or the county board of ed, but I think it would be useful to at least draw from their experiences and some of their operating rules to try to inform our own operating rules. So just a couple proposed rules.
Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt you. People would probably notice that Dr. Ryle is making notes of what we're saying. And Dr. Ryle, if you could start us a new page that is just devoted to operating rules, that would be great. And then we'll collect, and everybody will be able to see what the suggestions are as we develop them. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I just
not
want
at
to
all.
make sure that got done. Thanks.
So just a few proposed rules, and these are drawn from City Council's rules and elsewhere. I think it would be helpful if our public comments are limited to the items on the agenda that are under discussion, with the exception, of course, of the place in the agenda for unscheduled oral communications. If two, that comments were limited to 3 minutes, with some additional time if a commenter needs an interpreter to allow time for that person to interpret. And 3, that the number of comments be capped at some number. I don't know what that should be, maybe 2 or 3 per meeting. But those are just a few suggestions. And I'm recommending these for our formal meetings as an entire task force. I remember at the last meeting we did have a recommendation of having informal meetings, either of a subset of this task force, and those could be, for instance, listening sessions or involve more free-flowing conversation. But at least for the formal meetings of this entire task force, I think some rules of this sort might be helpful. So that's just me getting the conversation started. I'd love to hear from others.
Thank you. Does any task force member have any comment about any of those proposed rules?
I think that's a great start. I mean, how do we, I don't want to limit the community's input. However, if we can find a nice happy medium to getting community input and being able to navigate through our agenda, I'd love for us to just figure that out.
So do you have a response or reaction or a suggestion or a refinement of any of the ideas that Rob has offered?
No, the only thing would be maybe we incorporate some meetings where it's the majority is community input, and that is the bulk of the agenda.
Okay. Other reactions from the task force?
I like this idea of listening sessions in addition to the formal meetings, and it doesn't have to be, that also is where we can gather input from and like collate it to bring before the task force. So if there's a way we could do that, I think if community members are interested in that, I think that might be helpful.
Okay. Other thoughts? So why don't we look at these sort of together as this is the proposal that we have right now. So the idea would be that and actually the Brown Act requires that the public comments be limited to the item on the agenda that's under consideration, except for unscheduled oral communications, which, as you can see from the agenda, is the last item. And that can be on, obviously, it would be something related, I assume, but it would be that isn't tied to the agenda in the same way that that comments during the rest of the meeting have to be. So the items on the agenda, I think, can we agree that comment while an item is under consideration would be limited to that item?
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking at what I think is a consensus. Yes. Okay, good. The second question is, do we want to limit comments to 3 minutes? I have to say personally, I find it really oppressive to go to city council and you can only talk for 3 minutes. But I'm a lawyer, and so that's kind of maybe understandable. I would want to talk too much. But I think we have two things here that are proposing to limit people's participation per item. One is a number of comments per person, and the other is the time frame. So we're not taking comment yet. So do we want to adopt both of those? Do we want to consider them in light of each other?
I think limiting comments per person, like throughout the meeting, I think I can see the restriction, because especially as sorry, a little bit closer. Especially as conversations continue, I feel like people, think of other ideas or suggestions or recommendations. So I feel like that might be a bit restricting in that sense. I can see there, 3 minutes is, just from experience and going to city council, 3 minutes is relatively limiting for me whenever I go. So I don't know what a good amount of time is, though. But I do like the ideas of like the listening session / having like majority meetings where we're just having pure conversations with folks and, adding those in as folks see needed. I do like that, and I feel like that we could use those times and those spaces. And, personally, I can make myself available as well outside of these meetings. So I can see trying to see where we can find that nice happy medium of everything. But I would say the amount of comments per person can be a bit restricting, and maybe seeing where we find that, we're capping the minutes for someone to comment on at a time at least.
So Rob's suggestion was limiting comments per meeting. What if we limited comments per item, agenda item? So people could comment once or twice, or, what do people think about that?
It seems fair to me to allow them one comment per topic on the agenda.
Is there consensus about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So
And I was going to
I'm
add,
sorry.
just before Robert does that, says something, is that I think that whatever we do, it's got to be, it's going to be hard. You're the one who's going to hold people to it, right? So you're going to get the anger from people, but this has to be that we as a group have decided, and then we as a group can change, right? So
Right.
I just want to make sure that in many ways we have to test, we're trying to balance between the two things talked about, and so it isn't just limiting. I mean, it sounds like that's what's happening, but there's this other part about work.
right.
I just feel like it could be fluid. It could be opened up again if we start seeing it's not working right.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. I appreciate that. So we're deciding on these operating rules right now. We can reconsider them if they don't seem to be working. And I'm not sure if everyone could hear Catherine and Grecia reference the informal listening sessions. So we, as each of us up here, has got connections throughout South Fresno, and that's why we're here. That's how we got onto this committee. So we are, each of us has networks, and we are very anxious and willing to come, have task force role will travel. We are happy to go to, your whatever, any group that you meet with. We're happy to go and meet and talk about what the displacement avoidance effort is and what we want to do and how, and to more importantly listen to what people's concerns are about that. So these meetings are not the only places where you can be, where there's an opportunity for people to participate. So do we have consensus that people will speak once per each agenda item? Is that Grecia? You've got a funny look on your face.
Can we move it up to 2 and then figure out where we want to lie on them? Or I don't know. I just know personally whenever there's conversation happening, I'm just kind of I think of things I want to add to I'm thinking from my perspective when I'm not up here and I'm in the audience. So I would say maybe 2. I think that'd be reasonable. I feel like we can accommodate per item, and then figure out where we lie on amount of speaking time per comment period.
Okay. How do people feel about that?
That's fine.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. So now do we have consensus that any individual can speak twice on any given agenda item? Are we good with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So twice, 2 times. All right. So then that brings us to the proposed time limit, which is 3 minutes.
I think a total time limit of 5 if they speak twice.
Eric is suggesting a total time limit of 5. Would you say that again?
A total time. So if the public comes, if an individual is to speak to the task force on the first item, for 3 minutes, and then they are allowed to do a subsequent follow-up for 2 minutes with a 5-minute allocation.
So a total 5 minutes?
Yes.
Boy, this is going to be really complicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, would it just be easier just to do 2 3-minute ones, just so that way we don't have to keep tally of who already went once. And I feel, again, this is for patients and Eric, who, you know, I feel like y'all would be the ones
Eric's
trying
trying
to
to keep
tally
the time.
that. Yeah, so up to you, yeah.
So are we good with 2 3-minute contributions from each person per agenda item? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Does anybody have a problem with that? If people say, I'd like to take all my 6 minutes right now?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Does anybody have an objection to that? It just, okay. So, okay.
And what would be the structure? Would they turn in a card? Do they just wait in line? What's going to be the process for that?
So, I mean, I suppose if people know that they're going to speak, well, what do people think?
Yeah, I think if we're allowing the public to do the listening sessions also as an option, and then we're making ourselves also available outside of these meetings on issues that are of importance to the general public, I think that we run into kind of like the same issue from our last meeting where you don't want one person to monopolize the whole meeting. You want to have an equitable distribution where every individual that is participating in this meeting can share their voice.
Okay. So I think we accomplished that with one person speaking only twice, maximum total of 6 minutes on any agenda item, right? Plus listening sessions, and all of us on the task force make ourselves available. So we just want to be really clear about that. So do we agree then that these are going to be our operating rules? Anybody have any reservations or concerns? Gadesia, I think you were just going to say something before Eric did.
I think I was going to point to Catherine. I think she had, I wasn't sure if you had a concern earlier. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I guess I was a little concerned about merging them together, because in terms of first 2 3-minute sessions together, just because I was trying to, I don't know, I was just thinking about how do we get the most people involved as possible, and that I'm not sure that accomplishes that, but I'm unclear.
So the immediate question was, should people write their names on cards and whatnot? I'm sort of inclined,
Just keep it informal and
I'm inclined to just, somebody's moved to speak and they stand up and they're going to stand in line behind the microphone and we'll take them in order. And is that, people good with that? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Madam
Rob.
Chair. I like the idea of just people standing and it being a little more informal than the writing on a card. I will note that I do have the same reservation on combining the 2 3-minute segments into one, because I do see that limiting the number of other people who feel compelled to come up and speak as well.
I mean, I guess I was just thinking about professors, and you give them, they'll take as much time as you give them. So.
Almost as bad as lawyers.
Right.
So let's make a decision about this. I'm here, we've got arguments on both sides. Does somebody want to make a firm proposal and then we can vote on it?
Well, it seems to me one of the original reasons why we wanted to give them a second opportunity to talk was for them to process things
Right.
after they've heard others. So, I think it benefits the community as well if we give them a second opportunity after they've already spoken.
Okay.
No combining.
I'm sorry.
No combining.
All right. So do we
And
need to
then-
take a vote or?
Well, can I just, I think that it's also the structure of the items, right? So as an agenda item comes up, there's public comments, right? So people can make a comment, then the board has its conversations, and then that leads people to having their second comment. And if that's the format every time, that kind of makes it a little bit easier, right? Open up for public comment, bring it back for conversation amongst the members, not allowing public comment as the members are deliberating, and then opening it back up for additional public comments.
How's that sound?
Because I thought what happened last week is that every time there's a comment made up at the table, then that led to, the conversation went away from the board task force talking to each other.
So
I'm not
that
proposing-
structures the conversation too.
Right.
So we hear from the public, then we talk. Then when we're ready, we're like, okay, now what's next? Thank you, Artie. Then we could take it back to the public for additional comment, and then we'll close that second section of the public comment. Okay. So that sounds good to me. What do other people think? I'm seeing everyone nod. Eric, are you nodding too?
I am.
Okay, cool. Okay, so excellent. So those are going to be our rules, and I wonder if we could post those. I know we said we weren't going to post things, but it'll be nice to have those posted and everybody knows what the deal is. Okay, thank you very much. That was super efficient, y'all. So if Councilmember Arias is still here, which I'm guessing, yes. So we've had a suggestion from the city attorney's office that we also talk about, that we use the West Area Specific Plan Steering Committee rules to clarify issues like what is a quorum and how many people will it take to make a decision. Is that right, Raj? So. Yeah, these look very basic, and actually I sort of assumed these were the rules without having been specific about them. What I'd like to do, thank you, what I'd like to do is at the next meeting, let's everybody read these, okay? At the next meeting, we're not in the position to make a decision right now, so that's not an issue yet, but let's make a decision about this by the next meeting, okay? Thank you.
The only thing I was going to say, following what we just laid out, is to get comments from our rules from the community. I don't know if I know we want to hear from Miguel, but I just thought.
So actually, this how we operate, people can let us know next time. We said we can change them, and if there's some issue with them, then that'll surface and we'll address them again, because we're going to talk about rules again. Councilmember Arias, your timing is perfect. Thank you so much.
3 minutes.
So our hope
Wait. I want to have a discussion about what rules I have to follow and whether I agree to them.
Uh-oh.
That will only take 25 minutes.
So this map, hopefully everybody in the audience has got a copy of the map, and I think that'll be helpful.
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, and I got to excuse myself early because I have to go pick up my daughter from her track practice at 5 and then go to a town hall meeting on cannabis, which is equally important. What I wanted to do today is just give you my acknowledgement, my thank yous. You guys are a group of very bright and some of the best minds that we have in Fresno. After you've, I'm sure, confirmed all your rules, you're going to get to nitty-gritty of what we expect from the task force. Just for clarity purposes, there's been some confusion around the community about the role of the task force. So I wanted to give you some reassurances that we know what we're asking of you is a very, very heavy task, that you will have sufficient time to dive really deep in the data, to come up with recommendations, and to monitor the potential displacement that occurs across the section area that we've identified. At the same time, the TCC committee will begin the development of its displacement avoidance plan that we will make sure we hit on target with the state and SGC to ensure that those projects continue to move in a timely manner. So in essence, the TCC committee will continue its work with the displacement avoidance plan. We will ask you to provide us feedback and guidance in that plan, allowing us to meet the deadline of July 1st internally and with the state. And at the same time, hoping that you guys will learn from that process. That's going to be quick for some of us, but the expectation for the task force is that you allow us to provide you more data on rents, residential rents, business rents, also that you're allowed to monitor some of the potential displacement that we know will occur. And my hope is that this task force will identify the strategies, make recommendations prior to anyone potentially being dislocated as a result of these revitalization efforts across the city. So with that, I want to assure you, you will have more time. We're not going to put your back against the wall. More importantly, we want to make sure that the residents have sufficient time to be part of the process, understand the data that you guys are reviewing, assess the recommendations, be able to engage in the concerns that they may have, so that ultimately when you make the recommendations to the council, we have as many people on board and on the same page. So again, with that, thank you and good luck to you. This is the beginning of a process that will take a while, but I am assured that the pretty bright people on this task force will come up with some very good recommendations that the community can be proud of, and more importantly, that the council, my hope is, can unanimously approve when that time comes.
May I ask you one question, Councilmember?
Yes, ma'am.
As we understand the timeline for the TCC displacement avoidance plan, it's going to go without, the city council doesn't have to approve it before it goes to SGC, right?
Correct.
Okay. And that assumes that nothing in the displacement avoidance plan is a policy change, right?
Correct.
So if the TCC committee, Transform Fresno committee, recommends to you that the displacement avoidance plan includes stuff that the council would have to approve, then how does the council anticipate handling that?
So what I anticipate is your work, the TCC committee's work on the displacement avoidance plan are all going to include a series of recommendations that the council will have to take up at the appropriate time.
Okay.
Depending on the content and the depthness of the recommendation will determine how we handle it at the council. Some things might be pretty simple, other things might require budget allocation, other things might require public hearings, change of the general plan, municipal code that can take a series of months. So I think it would depend on the type of recommendation and the requirements legally that we're required to follow. Perfect. With those kind of policies.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you all and best of luck.
Thanks. So this is the point at which we said we would move to the Transform Fresno. This group wants to make recommendations to the Transform Fresno committee about what should be included in the displacement avoidance plan. And most of you have got copies in front of you of the, I'm looking for it here. So the Strategic Growth Council provided a set of charts, and the ones we have got little stars on them that show what the city is already doing to avoid displacement, policies the city already has in place. And on the front side, or on one side, is the residential displacement strategies. On the other side is the commercial displacement strategies. The other thing I want to draw people's attention to is we've got a displacement program area map. I think we should call it the anti-displacement program area map, but that's, we all know what we're talking about. This little yellow part in the middle, that's the area that TCC is related, is pertinent to. No, that's the green. The green. Oh, the green area, right. Okay, so the green area is about, it's this area kind of in the middle. It's maybe half the area. So the recommendations that this group makes, we're making having in mind the whole area. The Transform Fresno group is going to make recommendations that relate to the green area. But as Councilmember Arias said, that's a start. And our work, we're going to have plenty of time to do the more thorough, data-driven work that will affect not only the big area outside of the TCC area, but also the TCC area. So let me just say one other thing. The TCC has some specific programs that are already proposed, that are already pretty, they're already defined in a way that other projects in the area are not. So I just want to make a proposal, a thought about how we might work with the TCC plan. and that is that we use the TCC specific proposals as a kind of, I started to say guinea pig, that would be the wrong name, but that as a set of specific proposals that we can focus on to develop, to identify and develop all the data that we would need to learn about in order to make the good and robust recommendations that Councilmember Arias and his colleagues expect from us. Does that make sense, what I've just proposed? I see some quizzical looks. That looks like the answer would be no. All right. Well, let's do this then. Let's let city staff, I think, Courtney, you were going to, did you have a presentation today? No. Okay. So that the workshop that's occurring on the 15th, so okay, so up here, there's a chart. It says Transform Fresno DAP, which is Displacement Avoidance Plan, right? So May 6th is today. Thank you. Thank you, Artie. So May 6th is today. May 15th, there will be a community workshop. That's one opportunity for public input. May 20th to June 20th is a public comment period, second opportunity for public input. June 12th is a TCC community meeting, third opportunity for public input. And then the draft or the proposed DAP will go to the Strategic Growth Council, who has to bless it and agree that it's adequate. It will go to them on July 2nd. So I mention this because there are repeated opportunities for input and the input we can offer by July 2nd is not going to be anything like the input we'll be able to offer in August or September. Hold on just a second. So I would like us to think today about what are the strategies, if any, that this committee, that this task force wants to recommend at any stage of this public comment process before this DAP goes to the people in Sacramento who are going to make a decision about it. So that's the question. I see some people in the public have got some questions. Does anyone on the task force have any suggestions or input right now? Grecia.
So just general like framework for the actual workshop on the 15th, I think what would be helpful is, I mean, what's kind of easy about this is our options are limited. We have to pick, some of these policies, 3 residential and 2 retail policies. What I think would be really helpful at the workshop in particular is the remaining policies that the city is not implementing, let's not only define those, but then have examples in other cities or other areas, or what that could look like there or what it could look like here, so folks can really wrap their head around this, because some of these are really, really technical, and I don't even have like a full grasp on some of these. So I think that would be really helpful as far as like process-wise for the 15th workshop, and then allowing folks to essentially kind of how the whole TCC process was of voting, allowing people to vote on the policies that they would like to see ultimately, hopefully adopted by SGC and then by the city council.
So the workshop on the 15th is not our workshop, right?
Yeah.
It's a Transform Fresno workshop. Mm-hmm. And the question is, does this body want to propose strategies by way of our contribution to that effort on the 15th? That's actually the question that's before us. So I agree with you, it would be great to have these fleshed out and explained with concrete examples.
So what do you mean by like strategies, like as far as how is it that they should do outreach, or what policies they should be looking at, or?
So we as a task force, we're part of the community, we're part of the public.
Yeah.
We have a special interest in anti-displacement, which is why we're on this task force. Mm-hmm. So the question is, does this task force want to forward to the Transform Fresno Committee a recommendation from us? That's the question. So, I mean, I think probably most of us on the committee know what these are.
Yeah.
And then that might be, I mean, that would be the subject matter right now, to consider and decide whether in a couple of weeks or 10 days or whatever, when the committee meets, someone from this committee this task force will be at that meeting to say, the anti-displacement task force has these following recommendations. Do we
Yeah.
want to do that? We don't have to.
Well, I think what would be more helpful would actually us joining the workshop in the first place and hearing from the community what they would want to see first before we jump ship and do our personal recommendations, which, you know, we understand some of these, but, you know, these are the lived experiences of folks. So I think if we can, as a committee, we can, you know, take a step back and allow the community, you know, the opportunity, because really the whole public, like the whole reason SGC is doing this is because the displacement avoidance plan is supposed to be community-led. They're very intentional about having a public process and having that workshop and having a 30 to 45-day comment period because they want to ensure people's voices are heard. So I think, you know, as a task force this is a process that has been going on for 2 years now. So as a task force who, you know, some of us have been involved in that, some of us haven't, like kind of be respectful of the process that folks have been doing for the past 2 years and really listen to them and really echo their concerns rather than, you know, kind of pick ours.
So I heard a comment down here.
Yeah,
Was that your question?
I think that it would be hard for us tonight to come up with what's our recommendations as a group, right? So I do think going on the 15th as observers or individual participants makes a lot of sense. And then during that initial comment period, that we have a meeting, I would assume there's probably going to be a meeting at that point. And then if we decide we want to weigh in, we could as an official body. I think it would have been great if we'd been meeting 6 months ago, so we would be
Amen.
ready next week. I just don't think we're ready. I think it'd be kind of hard pressed to pick which items.
So I know I have to be on the East Coast at a conference. So how many of us on this task force can be present on May 15th at the meeting? Okay, great.
And just for clarity, Morgan and I sit on the Oversight and Outreach Committee for TCC. So, you know, we can always be in communication, we obviously will be, with the recommendations of this task force. So we can always take that back to the oversight meeting conversations as well.
Great. So a couple of people have raised their hands. It occurs to me this is a good opportunity to take public input about these strategies at this time if people are interested in offering public comment. Yes, Ms. Tapscott-Munson.
Maybe if you give me 1 second. I'm with the.
Sorry.
I'm on the Oversight and Outreach Committee for the TCC thing. I'm not going to be here for the May 15th. I'm going to be out of town. But, you know, that committee is, just like us, they're community members that they would probably like to give us input on the direction that we take this displacement avoidance plan. So, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to verify our due date, July 2nd. Councilmember Addis said July 1st is the deadline. So I just want to make sure that we're correct on that deadline and verify that, please.
Staff, Courtney?
Our due date to SGC is the 2nd, but we actually have to do it by the first week of the 11th. That's why it's
So it's effectively the 1st, even though technically it's the 2nd. Is that fair to say?
right. It has to be in their hands on the 2nd.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did anyone else have any other comments at this time from the public on this issue? Yes, ma'am. Please come forward to the microphone. And right now what we're talking about are the strategies for displacement avoidance. This document, if you have thoughts about what you would like to see us recommend eventually.
Oh, well, mine is probably different from yours then. I was wondering, could you put these dates and where the meetings would be up on the screen so we could see them?
Can we? That's a technical question. I'm asking staff if they can do that. Thank you. So I guess one question is, I actually, I have a question of staff. This document that we've got with the matrix on it seems to indicate that the city has applied to local, state, and federal programs to fund preservation of affordable housing. Is that, are we talking about CDBG money there? What? Yes, okay. Is the city itself taking responsibility to build any housing? It's, you know, to actually fund building of housing?
So it's twofold. It's the city and with other partners. So we've reached out to partners, you know, like the Fresno Housing Authority, who's a partner in the Transform Fresno plan. They actively do that, but the city has also done that. So in the past year, we've received funding for the Blackstone and McKinley project. We were kind of a co-partner in that aspect. We have the South Stadium project, which is in downtown. We were also a co-applicant, and you know, whenever a developer is interested, we try to partner with them as well. So it is something the city does actively.
Thanks, Laura. So does anyone in the public have any questions about any of these strategies or any comment about any of them?
Okay, so reading under Kimberly Tapscott-Munson, action items, so it's saying one policy, we need to select one policy from at least 3 of the policy categories. Is that what you're asking us right now to do?
My understanding is we have to take one policy from at least 3 of the policy categories, yes.
Okay. And that's included in Table 2, and
Right.
then there's instructions for Table 3.
Right.
So right now you want us to look at Table 2 on the displacement avoidance plan requirement and to start to come up and lobby which one we would like to be selected?
Well, we're interested in hearing what people think about these strategies and what they recommend or or questions they might have about them.
So then from Table 2, do you want us to select 3 out of the 4 or 1 of the 4? Or give you our top 3?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, may I just jump in real quick?
Yes.
I was under the impression that these specific requirements, so the DAP must include one policy from at least 3 of the policy categories, including Table 2, et cetera, that's the work of the Transform Fresno group.
That is.
That's not us.
So it's not our portfolio, but as a body, we may want to make recommendations that would comply to the Transform Fresno committee that would be consistent with their portfolio, which is what they need, you know, what they're supposed to do. And so this is an opportunity for public input.
And so one of the things I also want to mention that this is a component that needs to go along with our TCC recommendations. So this is something we have to create, preferably as a community with community input, and it is a component that needs to go along with the TCC agreement, correct?
That and the people who will make that decision about what it actually looks like are the Transform Fresno committee.
Got it.
Okay.
So then looking at Table 2, so do you want us to start with our top 3 or just give you one from Table 2?
So you can ask questions. There's not, you know, and I think actually you're probably maybe running out of time right now, but you can ask questions. You can advocate for one of them. I mean, really the question is, do people want to discuss these, or can we just move on to the next thing?
Well, I know we need to start the process moving, so that's why I'm asking from Table 2, would you like us just to go ahead and start making recommendations of one or our top 3 from the 4?
Whatever is,
okay,
whatever you feel
so
moved to talk about.
So we can get the process moving. I first looked at project of affordable housing as one that should be included. Preservation of affordable housing, and neighborhood stabilization and wealth building.
Thank you. Ms. Harris?
My name is Brunette Harris, and I'm with the Heath of Southwest Fresno community. I want to make one thing clear before you guys get started. Now you got fundings that's coming from HUD, which is federal. This is their guidelines. Their guideline states any substantial amendment, and that's what you guys are dealing with right now. It says that any substantial amendment, the citizen participation plan must provide at least 30 days to receive comment on a substantial amendment before the amendment is implemented. You guys are not doing that. So I want to know how you feel like you in order. The majority of people that are in here do not know what you're talking about. And you guys are not explaining anything to us. You guys continuing like we don't exist with whatever you got going on. Whoever put you in place, all of you guys are not part of our community. We don't know who you are. You come up with all of these, look at these dates you got up here. Our community don't know what you're talking about. And you guys sit here and talk amongst yourself. You took up how many hours? You took up a whole hour, didn't you? But you want to limit us to what we got to see. This is what we get when we go to the city council. You guys want to limit us on what we have to say. This is our community. This is not you guys' community. And basically, you don't care. And you can't say that you do out of all you guys did since you sit down. Everything that you did, you should have done it before you got here. We want to know what's going on. The federal guidelines, you guys are not following it. So if you're not following it, you guys need to talk to the city because HUD has to deal with this. And you guys are going to be responsible for this. You're not following the guidelines. These are HUD guidelines that you have to follow. We deserve a 30-day before you even implement, you guys even sitting there talking about a transformative displacement.
Ms. Harris, when you're talking about a 30-day lead time, you're referring to a substantial amendment to
Yes.
the city's action plan?
To the specific plan. All of this that you guys are doing, this is the specific plan, the action plan, all of it. It's a combination.
Okay, thank you.
And so this is the federal guidelines. So you guys need to, just like we told you about reading the Southwest Fresno specific plan, you guys haven't even done that. How are you going to represent somebody and you don't know what's going on?
Thank you. Raj, could you come forward to the microphone, please? Actually, if you could come up here, we'd appreciate it. Thanks. So I think it's important for us to know whether or not our activity here qualifies as a substantial amendment to the, let me see what this is, to the consolidated plan. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harris. So we're going to ask the city attorney, Raj, could you just state your name for the record?
Raj Badeja, City Attorney's Office,
Thank
City
you.
of Fresno.
Thank you.
So you asked the question whether or not this qualifies as a substantial amendment. I do not believe it does. The task force is formed by resolution of the City of Fresno, City Council in accordance with state law, and your task is to gather information and provide recommendations to the City Council so that the City Council can take final action.
And the city council, if it does act on our recommendations, does it then, would that action constitute a substantial amendment to the consolidated plan?
At this time, I'm not certain that it does.
It would depend what they actually
But we can
did,
certainly
right?
look into it if the the task
Okay.
force wills us to.
Okay. Is it fair to say that that's not going to happen in 30 days, no matter what?
I do not know.
Okay. Well, I can tell you we won't have a recommendation for at least 30 days. So I guess that's, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Does anybody on the committee have a question of the city attorney? Rob?
Oh, I guess, yeah, just a clarifying question. My understanding is that we are coming up with recommendations. And so no action that we take is actually amending any plan, whether it's the downtown neighborhood plan, the Southwest plan, the housing element, which is a part of the general plan. Nothing we do is actually amending any of those. We're developing recommendations. So I just want to make sure that that
Exactly.
view is correct.
That is correct. I just wanted to have my binder.
Okay.
And
So,
sorry, go
just to
ahead.
clarify, sorry for interrupting, but just to clarify, so the task force, the purpose of the task force is to, quote, explore ways to provide opportunities for low-income residents and merchants to remain in their neighborhoods if displacement is observed due to substantial and sustained increases in rent. The displacement task force may analyze data and recommend resolutions related to all causes and areas of displacement beyond those called for in the housing element, so long as the requirements of housing element program 12A are specified. So the task force makes recommendations to the council.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, just point of clarification, because I think it relates to the DAP, I think you called it, DAP.
Right.
Yeah. So it seems to me that the focus of this group, council, is if there's rent increases, that if rent increases causing displacement, then therefore we're to explore ways to help either residents or businesses remain in their neighborhood. If an increase in rents causes displacement, then therefore our charge is to find ways, opportunities to keep them in their neighborhood. Is that fair?
That sounds like what the resolution says.
Great. So we can, I think we're happy to, my opinion is happy to opine on the DAP principles, particularly because I think at the last meeting, Mr. Spies had indicated that they'd like to have us technically approve it, if you will, but we're not the approving body per se. So I think us, in terms of your earlier question that you've asked several times, is what strategies do we want to implement? Do we want to call out? I think it's a good thing for us to know those things, and we can certainly take a lot of input from the public to pass along to the other group. That's really important for the first leg. Fundamentally, though, it seems like our charge is to be focused on this one point. If the rent, due to the improvements of the money, if rent increases and it displaces anybody within this geographical boundary, then it's our responsibility to find ways to keep them in the neighborhood. And keeping them in the neighborhood is first and foremost the number one charge, at least in my opinion. So I think we can give this a look and give the DAP principles, especially if we have the audience here, let's pass along what they would like the other group to hear. But keeping people in their neighborhood is fundamentally the focus of this, and I just wanted to hear from council that that is, in fact, the focus of the resolution.
That is what the city council said.
That's our job. Exactly. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So go ahead.
No, I was just kind of getting us back to this topic was TCC, the topic of the questions. And so the TCC, if we're talking about TCC, those are not HUD dollars, they're state dollars.
Correct.
Right?
Right. That's my understanding. They're state dollars. Okay. We got the thumbs up from city. That's what they are. They're state dollars. They're not HUD dollars. So, Ms. Tapscott-Munson, you are going to be out of order right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Does anyone else in the audience want to talk about any of these strategies? Yes, Ms. Bobby.
Well, we don't pay to be short. Yes, about this, foremost, this displacement, it is going to encompass the entire community, because on your map it shows as to what it's going to cover, and it's the entire southwest community. So there has to be displacements. But the thing about your displacement, it is that I heard you say about the cost. Any, renters or whatever. Anytime that you take people out of their communities, out of their homes, there is going to be increase in costs.
That's right.
My own experience is that when I had a business over there where the Kearney Palm Plaza Center is, I was told, and I think Cynthia was on the planning commission, all that. I was told personally, and the people that was around in that area, is that you would not be displaced out of this particular project. It would be in a consideration of the cost because of the low-income area. And to make a long story short, I think Biggs was one of the developers, because I spoke to him personally. And so when this shopping center was built, everyone that was already in that area was totally displaced because of the cost. Because my business was there. And so I was told that I would not have a high increase in my lease or my rent. And so I was totally priced out of it. So, and so those that did come in, and you can check your records and go back over your records, and everyone that basically came into that shopping center was not there no more than a year to 3 years because of the cost. So there is displacement. This community is on seniors, people who are already on fixed incomes. So any type of displacement is going to cost. So this entire area is about displacement. This is, and so all of your conversation here, no one in here basically that is part of this community, I don't think they even got any of this information for them to even make a comment. So then when you say you make a comment 3 minutes, what can you comment on when you don't even know what to ask? So yeah, there is going to be displacement.
Was there a displacement avoidance plan at that time?
Yes.
Who created that plan?
I don't know nothing about the plan, but I was told, and the people that was in that area.
Because what I'm understanding,
Could you just let her finish?
Oh, I'm
She
sorry.
wasn't quite done.
We was told, because I had a meeting, and those that was in the area had meetings with Tom, I think it's Tom Biggs. He was one of the developers. I don't know how many else were there. But the conversation was that you would not be priced out of the area. So my cost was affordable. I was able to have my business. It was a prosperous business. But when they brought that shopping center in, everything went skyrocket. I was quoted that I would be paying, I was asking for at least 1,000 square feet. I was told that it would be like maybe between 50 to 75% square. When that shopping center was built, I was quoted $1.25 and maybe more. So that took me totally out of it. And plus, I had to put in all my own flooring, everything, plumbing, everything.
Thank you. Morgan, did you?
As of what I understand, I don't know if there's ever been a displacement avoidance plan in the city of Fresno. So.
Sounds like there were just promises made that weren't part of a plan, and they weren't honest promises.
Yeah, and which is unfortunate because, we just are coming off of the Fulton Mall not having a displacement avoidance plan. Right now, Chinatown is just getting bought up by big-time developers, and there is no development plan. But this is to protect the stuff moving forward because this is history. We can't let it repeat itself. So I'm glad that we're here. We can talk about these things. But, stories like that, when they're giving you false promises,
That's what it was.
But this is going to be official now. So just wanted to.
So let me just actually address this, because you're right. So the fact that we're here, we are actually, all we can do is make recommendations to the city council. What's important about this process is you. Because you being here and your stories about the false promises that were made in the past, and the impact on you, and the impact on the economy of this area, when people with prosperous businesses got priced out and can no longer operate them, all of that is part of what our recommendations are intended to avoid. But the only way to make sure they actually get adopted and enforced, it's like that eternal vigilance thing, is to pressure the city council to adopt the recommendations, and then to keep an eagle eye on what actually happens.
Well, can I just say this, since you commented that part? Just let me say this.
I'm going to call on you in a minute.
Our area is totally redlined. Our community is redlined. So anyone that even want to build, or or they want to, even try to get business, loans for business or whatever, to go and try to get a loan or anything because of the red line in our community. You can't even, do anything to kind of help your business.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Hall, would you please approach the microphone and address us?
Microphone working?
Yes.
I want to say hello to God, because I really need God right now. And everybody in this room needs God. I didn't interrupt anyone when they was talking. Did I miss Mill Road? One of the biggest recommendations I hope you guys are able to hold on to in terms of operating is when folks have spoken and sit down, that they don't continue to take over the meetings. Okay? You guys have to control that, okay, please. My name is Sylvester Hall. And for those here that don't know who I am, I'm the son of K.C. Hall, the grandson of Isaac Hall, the great-grandson of William Hall, a slave from Mississippi. The reason I said that, because we're talking about anti-displacement. And as a people, we've been displaced for over 350 years. That's my motivation. I don't come from 1960, 1970. I come from 1776 with my suffering. I am the creator and the originator of the West Creek Village Development Strategic Plan for Southwest Fresno. I wrote the plan in graduate school in 2013 at the Craig School of Business. This is not some plan from 1969. It's not the general plan. It's not the Southwest Pacific plan. It's not the Martin Luther King Activity Center plan. It is the West Creek Village Development Plan that I personally wrote in graduate school. In terms of anti-displacement, I want folks to know they're absolutely correct when they talk about the past in Fresno, because I studied the past before I wrote the plan. And I've seen how my community got screwed time after time. Decade after decade, Southwest Fresno got screwed. So when I came home in 2000, I wrote a plan that we wouldn't get screwed. The difference in the development of the West Creek Village site versus the other sites that have been mentioned, the Kearney Plaza site, it wasn't owned or originated by somebody from your own neighborhood, from your family, right, Brother Celeste? My namesake. We ain't gonna get screwed because y'all got a brother from y'all neighborhood standing in the vanguard with you. So when it comes down to anti-displacement, the housing that we're building.
Mr. Hall,
How much time I got? My 6 minutes up?
your 3 minutes are up.
Okay,
So-
and I'll try to,
so
let me
come
try to wrap
back.
it up.
Come back after we bring it here.
I should talk because I can stop a lot of the misnomers that's going to come after I speak. So these people know where the power in their project and their community is coming from. Unlike in the past, let me say this, and no offense to the Caucasians in the room, white folks have been in charge of our property and our development in our neighborhoods. Never in the history of Southwest Fresno have a black man locked down 120 acres in his own neighborhood, and then went to his fellow brothers and sisters and said, how y'all want to do this? It ain't happened in history. That's God bringing me home. I spent 45 years of my life preparing to come home and help this neighborhood, not North Side, not downtown, but Southwest. And I'm fed up with people with misinformation coming up here talking about this is the same plan from the past. We ain't gonna have a right to put any businesses in our new business development, because I'm willing, and my ownership group is willing to sit down with every person in my neighborhood and talk about what they want to see and what they want to realize in their community. Every business that's put in our 313,000 square foot of retail development, we will decide. Ain't nobody downtown gonna decide. When it comes down to the park that's being built over there, when downtown is trying to screw y'all and talk about what they ain't gonna put in there, I'm the only black man in the room out of 15 other ethnicities talking about screwing us. I had to tell one of the administrators tonight that ain't gonna happen. Everything that's gonna happen over here is gonna happen to the will of these people. Whatever y'all wanna see over here on our project between Martin Luther King, between Church, between Knight, and between Jensen, y'all get with Sylvester Hall. Y'all get with Sylvester Hall.
Mr.
And we'll
Hall?
fight downtown to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hill?
So I was looking at the table 2 and table 3, and I noticed the areas of real importance are not current policies. So when I think about displacement or anti-displacement, it's always about ownership, right? And none of the stars highlight anything about ownership. So the things that I would ask for you all to recommend are a couple, and some of them are repeat, but it's around land banking programs, community trust, those as two main ones, as a land banking, community trust, also about the right to return policies for existing households. And I also would add to that, to the concerns that we mentioned about the Kearney Palms, is also the same for small businesses. So the city doesn't have any kind of right to return policy outside of certain HUD perspectives. And because this is TCC and state money, that doesn't necessarily apply, so we need to add that. Also, as it relates to neighborhood stabilization, it says non-speculative home ownership opportunities. We need to recommend for the city to reestablish its down payment assistance program.
I'm sorry, which assistance program?
Down assistance, homeowner down assistance payment program. First-time homebuyer assistance payment program. It used to have that about 10 years ago, and it was done away with. And so we're really going to be serious about making sure people are not displaced. We have to create ownership, and that's the only way that really happens. And then on the business stabilization and wealth building, you have at the bottom contracting with local and small diverse-owned businesses, which the city has done a terrible job at that. It's usually about 2 to 3%, even though it's at least supposed to be at minimum at 12%. And so contracting with local small minority businesses. And then I would add also a facade and tenant improvement program. And so we want to make sure, one, do they have the right to be able to come back? And then does the city also have resources to help them do facade and tenant improvement so they can actually get into the buildings? All right, and those would be the things I would recommend.
Mr. Hill, would you mind talking a little bit about what you mean by right of return?
So yeah, it's almost like a first right of refusal to, if something's going to be built and it's cause a vacating of land. So like what happened at Kearney Palm Shopping Center is if there's going to be 10 businesses or plots that are available, the businesses that were there or the homeowners that were there would have the first right of refusal to be able to come back to that location.
Thank you.
Then the thing that, of course, needs to come with that is then access to resources to be able to do that. Right. So just having the right without the financial resources doesn't help the business owner or the homeowner be able to do that.
It's an empty right.
It's an empty right.
Thank you.
And so the right is sometimes available for renters, but that right is not available for homeowners or business owners.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
There was I guess a fact that was stated that around the neighborhood stabilization and wealth building program, currently as one of the starred items, contracting with local small diversely owned businesses, that the city currently does 2 to 3% contracting with small and diverse businesses with a 12% goal. Is that correct?
This is Sophia with Development and Resource Management. I don't know the quantity. We'd have to get back with you on that.
Okay, if you would, thank you. And also the current language that is in place that supports this particular item.
Thank you.
So,
yes, Catherine.
Is it possible to also ask for refinements on that? Because some development, anti-displacement programs in other cities have actually tried to hire by census tract too in terms of job and training programs that are supporting these, the locally owned businesses, so that it actually gets even more specific. Because local could mean, you know, North Fresno, not necessarily here. And then also, I just wanted to comment on the other part of the business displacement on the protection for small businesses. If we could get more information on the implementation of an overlay zone designed to protect and assist small businesses about whether or not that would actually keep rents the same for businesses that are already there prior to the development coming in, if that's what's meant sort of by that overlay zone and what that would look like.
So Jackie, you've got those, right? Okay, so there were two requests for information. I'm sorry?
I can just send them if you want.
So, I'd like to make it part of the record of the meeting. So, sorry. So, Eric, would you restate your request so that Dr. Rao can get it down on the notes?
That one of the items under the Neighborhood Stabilization and Wealth Building Program, one of the asterisks is contracting with local, small, diversely owned businesses. If they would please provide any language that supports this item that's currently in place at the city. And then we have been informed that the city currently does 2 to 3% in contracting with a 12% goal that they're not meeting. So just providing clarity.
Right, if the city's claiming they're doing it, then we would like to see, like, really are they doing it, right? Eric,
yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And then Catherine, your questions, could you restate them?
Sure, so.
Get kind of close to the microphone because I had trouble hearing you.
I can't hear very well. So part of the, to hire or to contract with locally owned businesses, some other cities and anti-displacement programs have actually even further refined that to do job training for these different programs by census tract. So I know that a lot of the TCC or part of the projects are about putting in solar installation, and you could actually just sort of also include in that the job training programs, which would be local, but also by census tracts that are actually affected in the particular area. So that's one. And then the second question is on the category of protections for small businesses, to get more information on the implementation of an overlay zone, so that existing businesses are not priced out in terms of rent, that you can create a zoning ordinance that actually protects those people that are already there, and see kind of what that would look like and maybe recommend that.
And probably it'll be good if you confer with Dr. Ryle after the meeting
Sure.
and make sure that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So it's 5:30. My theory was we might be done by 5:30. Hang on just a sec. So what I'd like to do is, what sounds to me, tell me if this is true, committee, we are not prepared right now to make specific recommendations. I take the point of the folks who said, we just got this, how the heck are we supposed to make comments about it or ask questions about it even? And it makes sense that at the late May meeting, which we're just about to set, that we would, because people now have this material, it's available on the website, so people will have a chance to review it and bring to the May meeting their questions, their suggestions, their recommendations, so that this body can put together its own, and it looks, we could probably have a meeting in late June also. No, June 20th. We have to have our comments in, our public comments have to be in before June 20th. So at the late May meeting, that would be a time that would probably be mostly public comment about these issues, and we could develop a set of recommendations at that meeting. Does the task force agree?
Well, I would say if we can go to the workshop and really help process that, everyone out, all of us, whether you're on the task force or not, that's probably going to be the best time to really help with getting a better grasp of everything.
Well, I imagine that many of the folks here today will also be attending that task force. The workshop. And I guess what I'm suggesting is what happens at the workshop happens there, and then people bring back to this body so that we can add to, refine, that this body also can consider the recommendations and make a set of concrete recommendations. So is that people good with that? Sal, you have a kind of furrowed brow look on you right now.
No, you're asking me. No, I'm fine with that. I guess I'm really thinking about a question to council in terms of codifying whether it's somehow preserving and codifying the recommendations and or comments from the public that are critical. I think the comments about the one example that we had today about somebody who was displaced is critical in terms of the mission. This is exactly what we're trying to prevent in terms of codifying the recommendations that we glean from the public and being able to convey them to the other committee is critical, and how it is that we preserve them in a formal way, in a legal way, so that they're preserved and moving forward. We don't have any more issues like that bad experience that you've had. Now we need the economic development, don't get me wrong. We don't need somebody who's displaced and can't go back into business because you can't afford the TI money or the rent's jumped, and you're an example of the absolute mission that we're trying to prevent.
Right.
So that was what I was thinking.
Okay. Well then, why don't, the next item on the agenda is a meeting schedule and work plan. And I see this evolving as we move forward. It sounds like we have agreement that we'll meet in late May, that our task in late May will be to hear from folks and for ourselves to develop a set of recommendations that will be incorporated into a public comment letter to the Transform Fresno Committee. So let's just call that the next thing we're going to do. And I don't think it's, well, tell me, do you think we need to lay out a whole, like, for the next 6 months, we're going to meet this often, this many times, et cetera?
I like the idea of, I think we're trying to do a few meetings quickly here to help meet the deadline, but I like the idea of setting it way in advance, 12 months. If we need to call a special meeting, you can, but that way everybody can accommodate schedules, and if it's once a month or twice a month or whatever it is that that the body should, we should be forward-thinking enough to set meetings in advance, and I'm for 12 months in advance.
So what if we circulate a proposed set of meeting dates? And I don't want to run afoul of the Brown Act, but as long as we don't make the decision by email, but we bring it all back here, at least people will have had a chance to check their calendars and bring alternatives and whatnot. Does that work for folks? Yes. So in the meantime, can we plan to meet on May 27th, which is the last Monday of May?
It's Memorial Day.
Oh, dang.
Oh, we'll all be free then.
Yeah. Hey, today is Cinco de Mayo, and I'm here. My office is closed. It's a holiday, so.
Yeah, it's family.
Yeah.
I think. I don't want to take away from family time.
All right. So I'm hearing. Okay, I get it. So what about June 2nd? What about May 15th? Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, 3rd. So people from this task force will be at the May 15th meeting. I can't be there, and I don't want to miss anything here. So, and we need to we as a task force need to come up with recommendations, specific recommendations that we're going to incorporate into a comment letter.
And Madam Chair, can you remind us when that comment letter is due?
It's due June 20th. So if we meet June 3rd, that would be plenty of time. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding heads. I'm not seeing anybody.
Yeah, the 3rd works for me.
Say what?
The 3rd works for me.
Okay, June 3rd. June 3rd will be our next meeting. Should we do it at 4 p.m.? Should we do it at 5? 4 o'clock? Okay. So, Monday, June 3rd, 4 p.m. And everybody who's in attendance, if you have left your email address when you signed in, then city staff will make sure that you have a meeting notice, agenda materials, right? This is all by email, and the location, because I'm not sure if the church can accommodate us next time. I'm not sure. I don't assume so. Thank you, sir. So I think this is fine. Are people good with that? When we meet here again? You're not available that day.
One of the recommendations that I threw out there was for us to maybe consider, because the footprint of the area that we're focusing on is large, so maybe we scatter the meetings to different aspects of the geographical footprint to make it fair for Southeast.
As long as we make sure people are knowing
where the meeting
right.
is. Yeah.
That's my main concern.
Right.
So I'm going to let those of you who have some ideas about where it should go work with staff, and then it'll be somewhere, and everyone will know a week ahead of time. Is that fair? Is that feasible? I know that it's normally, unless it's a special meeting, it's a 72-hour notice. So it would be great. I mean, are people okay with 72 hours? I'm not hearing a no. All right. It would be better a week, but we can only do what we can do. So, and if there are agenda materials to go with this, then that presumably takes some time. So, I'm gonna just go ahead. I know that Dr. Rao can't be with us that day, but I think let's just go ahead and do June 3rd, and we'll figure out how to take good notes. So there's one last. I'm sorry. Yeah. There's one last thing I want to mention. There was considerable concern at our last meeting about the Jensen Avenue widening project, whatever that ends up being. We have requested from the city engineer who's responsible for it, we have requested roadbed cross sections so we can see, like, this is how it is and this is how it's going to be. We've requested maps. He is out for surgery right now and he's not available. but my hope is that we will have him, we may not have him at the next meeting, depending on, we will have him at a meeting soon. And so I just want to let everybody know that. Ms. Tapscott-Munson, you had a question.
Thank you. This is to the city, and hopefully this will give us a better direction of, and bring us all back together. To the city, the question is, the Southwest Pacific Plan, the final draft that was written on October 26, 2017, has it been updated? And if so, can a copy of it be issued to the community?
Thanks, Ms. Tapscott-Munson. Thanks. Sophia?
Yes, hi. Sophia again with the Development and Resource Management Department. And the plan has not been amended. So it's just the way it was when it was adopted on October 26th.
And the entire thing is available on the city's website. And so it's available, and it would be great if, with the agenda materials, if you could just include the link so it's easily accessible. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you do have unscheduled oral communication. I have one request that these terms be defined because I think most of us do not know what they mean. So I think our discussion would be enabled a great deal.
So thank you.
And one further thing, I know lots of people who do not have email. So when invitations are sent out, it might be wise to give those, make flyers available for those of us who live in the area to distribute to our neighbors. I would encourage that. Thank you.
Can I ask, can I build on what she's saying? Is at the May 15th meeting for the TCC, is that part of the place where these different policy proposals are going to be defined?
Those of you who are on the Transform Fresno Committee.
Paige, can you answer that question? I mean, I
Yeah, I
think it's
know.
a
I
great
agree.
question. I would assume that all of those terms will be defined next week.
Oh, okay. But still, if we're going to discuss it tonight.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a question for staff. How do people learn what these things mean, for goodness sake?
We'll have a glossary for that meeting, and we will also have some data backing up the gold stars.
And so you will have a which, you said at the beginning?
A glossary?
Glossary. Okay. Is that something, do you have it already?
No.
When will you have it?
Well, I'll just say this, that, we can have it, we'll have to develop it, but we can have it for that meeting.
For the meeting on the 15th?
Yeah.
So
But
it would be great, because not everybody, I mean, these don't completely perfectly overlap, right? This group and that group. So if the city could include that in the materials that you send us for the next meeting, and also circulate to all the folks that have been in attendance at this meeting and at the last meeting. And we'll just keep building the mailing list and keep giving people information, and more information is always better. So that would be great to have a glossary that will have a definition in it of all these terms.
We'll put that glossary with the packet that goes out prior to the meeting.
Great, thank you very much. There's one other question I have of staff, and that is the request to figure out how to reach people who don't have email and make sure they get information. So it's so easy to press a button. You've got the email list addresses all in there, and you press send, and it goes.
So
and
we
boom.
send it to hard mail to everybody who has signed up at any meeting related to TCC. So we've got a list of over 500 and any of those addresses, folks that don't have email addresses but have hard snail mail addresses, we send to those.
Okay, and does that include people at this meeting?
Well, let's make sure you get us your, did you sign in today? We should have your information. You don't have email? We send it for, if you have email, we send it to your email. If you don't have email, such as, we then send it to your residence.
So just one sec. So I just want to finish this. So that's good, and these folks will be added to that list, right? If they don't have email, and they put in their snail mail address on the sign-in sheet. And then I guess the question is, people who haven't come to these meetings yet, then how do we do outreach to get to them in time for a meeting? So there was some discussion at the last
I
meeting
think
about
that
flyers.
this sister suggested that we have flyers that
Right.
we can give out to our neighbors. So
Right.
why don't we put a flyer in the packet so that folks here and anybody that receives the packet can duplicate that flyer and get it to their neighbors.
Okay, I think that'll work.
And of course, we always encourage folks that are in churches or community-based organizations to distribute to their constituency, and that's been successful as well.
Okay. Excellent. I see some nodding heads. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Harris, you had a question?
What I want to know is, like I said before, it doesn't make any sense as to what's happening because the majority of the people, even if they come, they still don't know what you're talking about. This stuff has been going on. I'm not personally saying you guys because the city put you in this position, but the majority of people do not know what's going on. Then you're taking the TCC in your group and you putting it together and you trying to run these meetings together because the city didn't do their job. So you running our community and they don't know what's happening, they don't know what's going on, and you want them to have a say-so in what? They don't know what you're talking about.
So, Ms. Harris, I will go anywhere you invite me. I will talk to whoever. I think probably everybody on this task force equally is committed to explaining and answering questions about whatever we know. There's going to be a glossary that describes what all these different terms are, which are, these are not necessarily terms everybody understands. And so we are at your disposal. You invite us to your, I don't know, your cooking group or your church or your, your basketball team. I don't care, but we'll go. And we will answer questions and we will explain.
Okay, ask one question. Did you guys read this?
Yes.
Read the whole thing?
No. But I have it and I've skimmed it. So, and I will read it, I promise. Yes, H.
So if
I'm not finished. Did you read this?
Probably not. I can't really see what it is. So wait, Ms. Harris, hang on. So H, yeah.
If the task force would like, we will do a 101, 1 hour 101 session for anybody that wants to come to the meeting place, which is Westside Church of God, an hour before the May 15th meeting, and and go through the glossary and answer any questions that anybody has.
So for people that really want to understand in depth and ask questions, the glossary will have gone out already, or it will be presented at that meeting. So what time is the meeting that night? The 15th?
4 o'clock? 6 o'clock. So we'll be there at 5.
So the meeting starts at 5, or the meeting starts at 6. If you want to discuss, ask questions, really thoroughly understand what all these different strategies are and how they work and how they might be applied in Fresno and whatnot, then go to Westside Church of God at 5 o'clock on the 15th. City staff will be there to explain. Bring your friends, your relations, everybody who's your neighbors, and you'll have an opportunity to get the information you feel you need in order to make recommendations and to participate in the conversation.
And the way we'll do that meeting, we'll facilitate that meeting so that, in other words, there are experts that are sitting up here and out here. Many of you have had this material for over a year because it was part of the SGC guidelines. You've already familiarized yourself with it. And you can break it down, and if you're at that meeting, we'll have a facilitated conversation. It's not going to be us talking heads telling you what things mean. So for experts that have on-the-ground experience and have looked into this stuff, we'll facilitate that, and it'll be a group discussion. We'll learn together.
Thank you. All right. Unscheduled public comment. Does anybody have any last words they need to say or things they want us to hear? I know you do. I would be surprised and disappointed.
Once again, I'm gonna let you know. What you're doing now, whatever group it is that you call yourself, the TCC and all you guys getting together, the community, all of that has to do with these two books, patients. The Southwest Fresno Specific Plan and this one. There's no way in this world, on those dates, that you're going to inform this community that they're about to be gentrified, because that's what these two books states. And that's the reason why I asked you guys, did you guys read it? Because there's no way in the world you putting a four-way lane next to Edison School that runs all the way down to Jensen that Edison is going to be there, nor anybody in that community. These four-way lanes go all the way, and the paperwork states it. It's right here. I'm going to show it to you when the meeting is over with. There's no way you can do that. This community did not get this information. And it's an insult. That's what I keep telling you. I'm not blaming you, because the city, this is a continuous thing that they do. Just like, I can't put, Sophia stood there and told that lie. In that Southwest Fresno Specific Plan, it said, since 1969, it's a lie, and I just call it the way I see it. In that paperwork, and the last time they amended it was in 2010. Now the paperwork, if I go to court and I'm standing before you patients, regardless to what she said, you want to see the paperwork, and that's the paperwork. But I'm just saying to you, there's no way in the world that you guys as a group can inform our community on these two pieces of paperwork, all of this and that, in that short length of time. Because all of it has to do with TCC, and the way that TCC works is they have to have housing, they have to have biking, they have to have all of this stuff that you're looking at in order for TCC to have their funding. All of it is combined into one, and the paperwork states that. And all I'm trying to tell you is our community has not been notified. This paperwork states they did it within 1,000 feet of the project. So somebody somewhere is not giving you the right information. This is in black and white. And like I say, once it's over, I'll show it to you. And it don't take that long to get to the pages.
Ms. Harris, I have one request of you, and actually of everybody. It's not okay to call people a liar. It's not okay. I understand. But let me just say, I need to finish. We have, at the highest levels of our government, a shameful failure to be civil and to be respectful of other people. So in this meeting, it's not okay with me to call people liars. So just you can say, I disagree, I believe this wasn't in good faith, whatever, but I would request respectfully that you not call people liars in this environment, okay? Well, I hear you. Thank you. I'm just saying, the next time somebody uses the word liar, they're sitting down right now, okay? That's all. It's both. Okay,
Madam
anything
Chair,
else?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I just make one clarification again. The Transform Fresno and the TCC process is separate from the process we're engaging in. Those dates up there are dates mandated by law for the Transform Fresno process.
Correct.
So we can't control that.
Exactly.
We're trying to figure out, do we want to provide recommendations to Transform Fresno? But either way, we already acknowledged last meeting that that timeline's too short for us to get what we want to get done. So we're going to give them some recommendations, but then continue to do our job in the best way we see fit, which is something a lot more substantive than what's up on that board.
Thank you, yeah.
I mean, I almost want to think that we don't even get involved in that, right? That our charge is 4 years, and it's a bigger process, a bigger area. That's going to happen without this group. And but I do think we've got a plan set forward, that we make comments, that we give some input. I think that's a good plan, but that is not our charge.
But, so, I mean, to also add, I think that the policy recommendations for the grant are set. There, you have to choose from an array. You don't get to invent all the other ones. But what would be great is if we see our role too as educating people about kind of where these policies have worked and where they haven't, and try to match people's experiences with the policies. So I agree, like in terms of these policy recommendations, like, you know, there's no reason why any of us should know in depth about what these different policies can and can't do. But we have enough time, if we're doing with the whole area, to do a really in-depth kind of discussion about matching what people have experienced with the policies that may prevent the negative experiences.
Well, and I don't know if Mr. Hill is still here. He is. So he raised some really great comments, right? But there's also a group that Artie's part of that's looking at how do you get wealth creation to happen and wealth ownership to happen within a community, right? So there are things that are happening, whether it's like Market Creek down in San Diego. So there are things not on the list that we should be exploring as well. So that to me is the exciting opportunity, is to look at not just what's on the TCC list, but to open up the opportunity.
Exactly, exactly. Okay. Anything else from the committee? Thank you all. We really appreciate your being here. We look forward to seeing you on June 3rd, and many of you will on May 15th. Thank you.